What's up YouTube, it's Saiyan here coming at you with another deck profile in Dragonball CCG. And guys, have I got a deck for you today. But first of all, shout out to my new subscribers. Thank you very much for tuning into my channel. Hopefully the content that you're going to receive in the future will be just as good as, the reason that I could give you to subscribe to my channel. So thank you very much. And for those of you tuning in for the first time, then make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, leave comments below, and I'm not gonna waste any more time with this. Today's video is back again into the old school Bandai Dragon Ball CCG, my love, my pride, my joy. And today I have an Android deck for you guys, Set 5 era. So let's jump right into it. We are going to start, actually, this one time we're going to start with the wish cards. So we got Existence of Hero. This allows us basically to search out a warrior from our deck and put it into our hand, then shuffle our planet. It's pretty important. As you're gonna see, we play with a lot of different warriors in this deck. So if we get to 7 Dragon Balls and get to make a wish, then this is definitely a very good option in allowing us to search our deck for cards. Then second wish, Revival of the Earth, which is in my opinion definitely one of the most versatile wishes, making it definitely one of the best ones. Shuffle all your discard pile into your deck and then draw 3 cards. Just a straight on really good wish. You can put it into any kind of deck. And then we got Regaining the Power, which grants one of our warriors Thrash 3 until end of turn. If you don't know what Thrash means if that team wins an overwhelming victory, i.e. 5 or more is the difference between our teams and the opposing team's power, then Thrash 3 will allow your main character, whoever you give Thrash 3 to basically put 3 cards from your opponent's deck into their planet damage zone. So it's extremely good in Thrash is generally a really good ability in getting loads of damage into your opponent. So starting with wishes, we got these 3, and jumping right into the warriors. This is a mono villain deck, 40 cards as usual, 25 warriors. We got 6 events and 9 technique cards, and I must say I've been working on this deck for quite some time, and I've been testing with it as well, so I really like how it turned out. For turn zeros, we got 3 Supreme Commander Red. It's an absolute staple if you're running Red Ribbon. It's a 0-0-0-0, but it gives, including to himself, +1/+1 until you have 6 or less Dragon Ball coins in your side, and he's got Plunder as well. So any of our warriors that has the Red Ribbon Army trait will get +1/+1. So he's gonna be one of our main power engines in this deck. So an inclusion of 3. I got 3 foils, pretty proud of that. Starting with 3 Supreme Commander Red. Moving on, we got 3 Ninja Murasaki. He's definitely the best powered turn 0 villain in the game. 2-1-2-0 injured stats, normal stats and injured stats. And guess what? He's got Red Ribbon armor, so army. So with Supreme Commander Red, he's gonna be a 3-2 or a 3-1 if injured. That way, there you go. And obviously we got a little bit more here in terms of Red Ribbon Army power. So we only run 6 cards for turn zeros. So we're gonna be moving on to turn 1s, and we got 3 copies of Dr. Gero. Guess what? Also Red Ribbon Army. A 0-2-0-1 if injured. Turn 1 drop, 3 free deploy cost, and when he comes into play you can search your deck for an Android card, put it on top of your deck, and if you do that you can discard a card and draw a card. And also in the strategy phase you can discard Dr. Gero and heal an Android warrior you control. Now this is one of those cards that has been actually errated before the game collapsed. That strategy ability, the heal your android, it's actually valid. So even if he gets injured, you can still sacrifice him to heal one of your androids, which would obviously make sense if you watch the anime as well. Dr. Gero went and started up the new androids once he was injured, so it doesn't. Yeah, the card on its own obviously was errated, so he got valid. Then we got 2 copies of Colonel Violet. Uh, she has been a recent addition to the deck. She allows you to, for free, in your strategy phase or in your whether you're an attacker or a blocker, you can target one of your warriors that you control and give it Red Ribbon Army trait. So there will be a few androids that doesn't possess the Red Ribbon Army trait originally, but with Colonel Violet, we can actually give them the +1/+1 that, for example, Supreme Commander Red grants. Before Colonel Violet, I used to run 2 Commander Blues here, but I found that it is a lot more important to be able to name some of our androids Red Ribbon Army. So this is it for turn 1, it's not too many. And then one of the main cards in our deck is Daizu. And you might be wondering, why is Daizu one of the main cards in our deck? So at this point in time, all I'm going to say is that he is a 3/1/2/1. If we have Violet down, then we can give him Red Ribbon, and basically he's got backup, which can be quite useful. And in the if we are the attacker in the strategy phase, it's got this valid ability to be basically discarded, and in that case we can discard target event with no restrictions in what event. It can be our opponent's or our own event, and it certainly doesn't have to have any specific counters. There's a lot of technique cards out that remove given events in play. However, Daizu allows us to remove any event from the game, and this is going to be very important as we go through this deck. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a copy of Daizu here on the side, and later when we get to the example I can just bring him out again. Then we start very early with our androids. At turn 4 actually we got 2 Android 14s, which is actually Android 15, but Bandai screwed up the naming, so there you go. Unfortunately, I only have 1 copy, so this copy is actually a photocopy. As you can see, it's just sleeved at the front of a different card. So I'm just gonna show you the one that I have. If you don't know when I got this card, then go and check out my mail date video, which I've posted previously. So Android 14, amazingly good card. He's one of those androids that actually has the Red Ribbon Army trait, which is obviously very important to us. And he's got a 5/1/4/0, so very decent stats. And of course, super important when he comes into play, you can deploy an Android 15 card from your hand this turn. So basically allowing us to deploy 2 warriors, and obviously in this game you're only allowed to deploy 1 warrior unless a card states otherwise. So 2 Android 14s, and of course we have 2 Android 15s as you would have expected. So Android 15 is a 4/3/02, an excellent support warrior. Also turn 4 we can obviously drop it in the same turn as we drop 14. And he has ally 14, meaning that if he's in the same team with 14, he actually doesn't count towards the 3 warrior maximum limit or that you can have in your organization phase. So you can actually make a very beefy team with these 2 guys if you have them out. And of course Red Ribbon Army. So if you look at Android 14, if you got Commander Red out, he is a 6/2 if uninjured, and he is a 5/4. So the 2 of them together with Red out, they make a team of 10. And then you can obviously slot in Red behind them to give them an additional 1 support. You got 11. So that's pretty good on turn 4 as well. Then we got 1 copy of Android 13. Originally I wasn't even running the 1 copy, and I was running 3 copies of 14 and 15. But I decided to include a 13. He's got Plunder, he's got Toughness, generally overall good keywords, and most importantly he's got Evolution 5. He can evolve into Android 13 United, which obviously we run in this deck, which I'm going to show you in a second. But for now, we have 1 copy of Android 13. And then moving on, turn 5, we got to sell the second copy. He is one of many excellent Android cards that we can run at turn 5. There is many other really good Androids. However, we choose to run Cell for multiple reasons. First of all, he is a 7-3-3-0. Being a 7-3, obviously he's already a great support warrior. He's got Fierce 2, and if he has a Dragon Ball coin, we can discard any number of warrior cards from our hands, and every single time he gets +1/+1 until the end of turn. So you can very easily pump him. You don't have to have additional techniques to be able to pump him. All you need to have is a couple of additional cards that you might not want to have in your hand, and we have some really good cards that help us get additional cards in our hand. So Cell, the second form, excellent supporter, excellent attacker as well, obviously being a 7-3. He doesn't, however, have Red Ribbon Army, so one of the main reasons why we run Colonel Violet in the deck, that we can actually pump him with Supreme Commander Red. In turn 6, we got 2 Android 13 United, obviously, as you would have guessed it, including Android 13. So I ran Android 13 United anyway in the original build. The only reason why I put in Android 13, so we can evolve into Android 13 United a turn early. And obviously he's got Plunder, he's got Toughness. When he comes into play through evolution, he comes into play with a growth coin, making him an 8-3 when he comes down to play, and even if injured, a 6-1, which is very impressive. And of course, if he's battling against a Saiyan, this warrior cannot receive any damage from an opponent's technique effects. So no Kamehamehas. The only thing I think is Super Dragon Fist. Super Dragon Fist cannot be negated. So yes, you can get Android 13 with Super Dragon Fist, but none of your usual damage dealing techniques. So yes, really good card, absolutely brilliant card, and the artwork as well. I kind of like the artwork. It's just generally very sweet. And then to close out the set of warriors, we got 2 Super 17s, which is definitely the top end of the curve, being a turn 7 drop. And to be very honest with you guys, I have been thinking to maybe cut him completely out of the deck, or maybe cut him down to 1. But the problem is that you still want to be able to draw into him. And if you cut him down to 1, there is a very high chance that he might, if he ends up in your planet damage, he will never even be able to do anything on turn 7. Obviously, it's a risk you take, when you run these decks. But if you actually look at the original Android 17 card, which came out in set 1, you can drop that in turn 5, and every time his team wins a victory, an outstanding victory, you get to draw a card. So that was like one of the first actually really good cards, warrior cards, that lets you draw cards. And in this deck, or in any deck that you run in Dragon Ball CCG, obviously card draw is almost a novelty. It's really difficult to find any cards that do it for you. But anyway, even if you look at Super 17 in the vacuum, he is a generally really good card. 7-4-6-2, excellent stats. Thresh 1, Fierce 1, Toughness. So he's got all these goodies going around. His team cannot be affected by beam techniques, which is amazing. Absolutely amazing. There are so many beam techniques out that are just really good and run by so many decks. And it doesn't just protect himself, he protects his whole team. So really good. And if a warrior your opponent controls becomes the user of a beam technique, you get to put a growth coin on him. So absolutely brilliant card. Obviously we can make him Red Ribbon as well with Colonel Violet, but to me it's a little bit silly. Obviously he even has the Red Ribbon logo on his belt, so why he isn't Red Ribbon Army, I have no idea, but for whatever reason he isn't. And now we get to the real engine of the deck. We run 3 copies of Unleashed Threat, which just absolutely breaks this deck. Remember that I was talking about Daizu? Daizu comes down in turn 2. At any point when you're the attacker, you can sacrifice him and remove an event from the game. Guess what Unleashed Threat does? He comes down in turn 3 for 1 chi with a time limit of 2. So normally you would have to wait for another 2 turns, and then when this event leaves play, you can put into play an Android Warrior with a turn cost of 5 or less from your hand. So what do? Obviously, we're not going to wait until turn 5 for the time limit to tick off this card. We're going to play Daizu. We're going to play Unleashed Threat. On turn 3, we're basically going to be able to drop a turn 5 Warrior. Because we can. Because it doesn't state that you have to have a specific turn cost on. It doesn't state anything like that. It says when this event leaves play, you can put into play an Android Warrior with a turn cost of 5 or less from your hand. It's not deployment, it's put into play. So we can completely break the game with Unleashed Threat if we can remove it with Daizu. Absolutely amazing. Guess how many androids we got in the deck that come down that have a turn cost of 5 or less. Well, let me just point it out for you. We got Dr. Giraud. Obviously, we're not going to drop him, but we have him in the roster. We also have Android 14s. What happens if you drop Android 14? You can deploy Android 15. Again, you can actually get Android 13 down, and if you can do that, you can evolve into Android 13 as well off Android 13 United off Android 13. And of course we got Cell. He's a turn cost 5 as well. So actually the only cards we can't straight away drop off Unleashed Threat are Android 13 United and Super 17. So it's absolutely game breaking. What it does is absolutely amazing. That's the whole point why I built this deck, is because this interaction between Daizu and Unleashed Threat is just it's OP. It's OP. So that's one of the reasons why we got Daizu in. Obviously, we got Unleashed Threat, 3 foils, which I'm pretty proud of again. And of course, for card draws, we got Fading Riches. We got 3 copies of Fading Riches. We want to be able to draw into it. It's a turn 4 drop event with 2 chi costs, time limit 1. When this card comes into play, you draw 3 cards, and at the start of your charge step, discard 1 card from your hand. So basically, normally would come off pretty bad after this card. Yes, you draw 3 cards, but because you have to discard a card at the start of your charge step, it means that basically as soon as you draw the card, you can't even charge it. So you would definitely lose those 2 cards that for the time limit when this event is in play. However, again, if you have Daizu, you can sacrifice Daizu after you drew 3 cards. You just basically sacrifice Fading Riches, and you never have to pay the discard cost of the card. So Daizu comes into play. Whatever happens, you can either remove your Unleashed Threat and just super quickly deploy or put into play very, very strong androids, or you can just basically get rid of your Fading Riches, allowing you to keep the 3 cards that you drew off it and never have to discard anymore. So Daizu is an absolute key card in this deck. It allows you to do all sorts of tricks. And then of course, let's not forget that of course your opponent might be playing with events that you might want to remove. So if you haven't got Unleashed Threat or Fading Riches to come into play anytime early, then you can use your dice against your opponent as well, giving you even more flexibility with this card. And trust me, the first time I saw this card, I was like, this card isn't good for anything. You know, you look at the guy. I mean, he was one of the he was basically one of the gang members of Turles' team. Wasn't really impressive in the movie or anything, but for some reason, obviously Turles is also very much event oriented, and so is Daizu. And once I found uses for this card, I was like, it's actually broken what he can do. Moving down to techniques, I got 3 dirty trick here, and I have a very good reason why. I ran 3 Siphon of Energy here originally, but I came to the conclusion that the deck became too expensive and too difficult to turn the cogs quickly around. And with Dirty Trick, you can play from the first turn onwards, first turn cost onwards, for any chi, which doesn't really matter here because we are mono villain. but it allows you to give an opposing warrior -1/-1, and you can also play it from your discard pile, which is extremely good because if we do end up having to throw cards away for Fading Riches, Dirty Trick is the best card that you can do. You can still reuse it from your discard pile. You don't actually 100% lose a card, because you can still utilize Dirty Trick from your discard area. And obviously with Siphon of Energy, you very much had to wait for your opponent to actually have chi in their chi area, and it gives a +1/+0 to one of your warriors depending from the amount of chi that there it is. Siphon of Energy, first of all, it's a turn 4 cost. It costs you 3 chi, and it requires you to have the user to be turn cost of 3 or more. So you can't use it early game, really holding you back, and you very much rely on your opponent to constantly keep up chi, and it's obviously the most effective if your opponent does have 3 chi in play. So Siphon was dropped, Dirty Trick was put in, made the deck a lot more lenient, and it can interact already from as soon as you finish your first turn, you can interact with your opponent with Dirty Trick. The remaining techniques, we got 3 copies of 4 Witches technique. Certainly one of the best techniques that villain ever that was ever printed for villain. Turn cost of 2, making another cheap interaction with your opponent, and target user gets +0/+X until the end of turn, where X is the target user's support value. So it basically doubles up one of your guys' support value. You remember what I said about Cell, for example? You remember what I said about Super 17? They're all extremely great support warriors. But even if we look at earlier drops, if we have Ninja Murasaki, for example, and Supreme Commander Red in play, Ninja Murasaki will have a 2 support, so you don't necessarily have to use him as a lead warrior. You can actually use him as a support, and then with 4 Witches technique, you can double up that 2, making him a 4 support. Dr. Gero, if he's in play, first you first drop your Supreme Commander Red, then you drop your Gero. Your Gero becomes a 1/3 with a 4 Witches technique. He's a 1/6. Amazing. Same goes for Colonel Violet. She becomes with red a 2/3. With 4 Witches technique, she becomes a 2/6. Again, amazing. Even Daizu, if you can give Daizu red ribbon with Colonel Violet, if you got Supreme Commander Red down, you get a 4/2 with the 4 Witches technique, becomes a 4/4. So just extremely good. Look at Android 15, turn 4, 4 drop, 4/3. If you got Red down, he's a 5/4 with the 4 Witches technique, is a 5/8. That's absolutely amazing. Amazing. This card is a godsend to this deck. Absolutely. It's just so good. So good. With a few easy cards to play, you can just basically almost double up your team. Or I'm exaggerating, but certainly being able to double up one of your support warriors' support value is amazing. And the cream de la cream, the last techniques, we got 3 Hellflesh. Just one of my most favorite cards, really. I absolutely love the artwork. I always loved the 16 in the series, and one of the best super rares as well. Certainly one of the best super rare techniques ever printed. So turn 4 cost, obviously it's a little bit expensive in terms of current turn cost, and also chi cost is 3, and you require to have an android warrior with a Dragon Ball coin on it. But in any action phase, target warrior gets -5/-5 until end of turn. Imagine this: the strongest pump technique in the game is, if we don't count any special traits, then the strongest technique really is the continuous die missile, giving out +4/+0. That is a turn cost of 4 for 3 chi. If we look at special traits, then obviously Powerful Heritage is the strongest pump technique, which gives +5/+0 to a Saiyan. Normally gives +3/+0 if the user is not a Saiyan. It's a turn 2 for 2 mana, 2 chi. So with Hell Flash, we actually have the flexibility to not just attack the front warrior, giving it -5, or we can potentially target a support warrior that would have up to minus with a -5 that has for some reason a very high support value cost. So Hell Flash in that terminology is actually very flexible. As long as we have an android in the team, we don't have to rely on our head warrior being an android, although most of the time it probably is going to be the case. But we can just target any of our opponent's cards. We don't have to worry about because we dishing out -5 is just super flexible to any other cards that are any of the warriors that our opponent might be playing. So as you can see, the deck is extremely aggressive, super aggressive for what the usual decks might be like in Dragon Ball CCG. And I think it being a monocolor as well, this is really really impressive for what it is. You can just absolutely break the game if you drop Unleashed Threat and you remove it from play with your Daizu. If you can drop your 14, um, you can deploy your Android 15 as well. Again, the turn cost doesn't have to apply, I don't think, at that point. But even if it does have to apply, which I'm going to have to look into, you can still drop Android 13. For example, in your turn 3, he's a 6-2. If you got Supreme Commander Red out, he's obviously a 7-3. And you can definitely drop your Cell the second form. And, he's a 7-3 on his own. You can discard Warriors from your hand, pumping him up. He's got Fierce 2, so you start milling your opponent's deck. 2 at the turn if you win. He can, switch on and start using Hell Flash. It's great. I absolutely love this deck, guys, I must say. If you remember, I was like super proud of my SSJ3 Goku deck. I am probably at least as proud of this deck as I am of that deck, because if you find interactions in a game that's like 10 years old that you've never seen around, it might have been around in the past, but I certainly not seen this floating about, certainly not on YouTube. I know the old school channels who used to work with this game. So yeah, if you like it, you can build it. Obviously, this is one of the costly decks. We got actually 9 super rares in this deck. We got 3 Hell Flash, 2 Cell, 2 Super 17, 2 Android 13 United. The other cards are also rare. So you got your Supreme Commander Red, that's a rare. You got your Android 13, that's a rare. You got your Android 14, that's a rare, and it's actually super difficult to find. I only still managed to find 1 copy. But if you do have the opportunity to build and try this deck out, then please do so, because it's an absolute blast to play with. You have to be very careful with how many cards you end up in your discard pile. Obviously, this is one of those decks where you can't really recycle. It's one of those things that you can't build around in a 40. You can't build around everything in a 40 card deck. So obviously, I have sort of spearheaded this to be almost like a rush deck. Try and get your Unleashed Threat down early. Try and remove it with your Daizu. Even if you can't remove it with your Daizu, it gives you an additional drop on turn 5, which is still super good. You got additional drops through Unleashed Threat, and you basically have a free deployment if you can drop 14 with having 15 in your hand. And also make sure that if you can use 13 to evolve into 13 United, because that will not just give you a growth coin, but actually allows you to evolve at turn 5. That's right. Android 13 allows evolution to Android 13 United at turn 5. So again, you can basically skip a turn with being able to deploy Android 13 United. And, it comes down with a growth coin as well. So don't forget, again, evolution is not deployment. You can only deploy 1 warrior each turn, unless the card states otherwise. And this deck is just abusing that rule so many ways, which is kind of disgusting. But this is what makes this deck so fun. And obviously, villains being villains, they like to break the rules, and this is exactly what I do in this deck. So, all right, Aglam, I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said at the beginning, make sure you like, you subscribe, you comment. But for now, peace out, YouTube. Bussy and signing out. Peace.